Okay, call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Here.
Mr. Gorbitz?
Here.
Ms. Laird? Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Ray?
Here.
Approve or amend and sign the minutes of the regular meeting held February 8th, 2021.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Price,
Second.
second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any questions regarding the minutes? Roll call, please.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Gorbitz?
Yes. Motion carries. Do we have any walk-on items?
No, sir, we do not.
Walk-on items. Superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gorbetz. Thank you, board. Tonight is one of our work sessions, and one of the things that you actually asked me this summer to sort of get back to you on, but also I might add, we've been talking about since I came on board 4 years ago. If you remember 3 years ago when we set up our goals and our vision and mission and all those things, we had this conversation about the diversity in our district and how our staff doesn't really reflect our proportion of diversity in our district, and just that it's something that we need to work on, and also make sure that all the students' needs are being met. And that's something that we've been working on, and Denise was, even when I first came on board, we started doing a few things, and I know that a lot of things have been accomplished since then, but we've really ramped that up here in the last 6 months. And a big part of that ramp up has been our cooperation with the city to bring on a diversity and inclusion officer. Tonight we have as our guest Ms. Shari Mullen, and I'm sure a familiar face for many of you, but she has come on board and has just done such a nice job of helping us set priorities and get focused and make some real concrete steps. One of the things that she did, I'm going to let her go ahead and start explaining, is she came on and she's going to do on the listening tour, right? That's sort of what it was. She just wanted to come in and just start talking to staff about how are we doing? What do we do well? What do we not do so well? And what can we do in the future? And that conversation yielded a lot of things, and I'll let her sort of speak to that. But also, board, if you would, feel free to ask questions. This is good work, and even as we sat down to organize this, we got together last week to talk about this presentation, we realized there's a lot of things that are intertwined. It's not just there's this piece and this piece and this piece. We're all working together, and a lot of things are connected to other things. So Denise and I and Shari will just sort of kind of just start going here, and we're going to talk about it. And please feel free to ask questions, or if you have any clarification that you need, let us know. So for now, Shari, if you wouldn't mind, kind of tell us about your listening tour and the things you found out and kind of the work that you've done.
Thank you, Mr. Detweiler. What I'm going to do is give you a little history of why we started the direction we started, what we learned from the listening tour, and then the takeaways. So with the history, looking at the district profile from 2019-2020, the total enrollment was 3,519 students. 72.4% students are economically disadvantaged. 13.1% are students with disability. In total, your student ethnicity is 43.3%. So those are our students of color that are across the district. So what we wanted to start out, the same thing I've done with the city, is stage one, listen to strategize. Wanted to come in and do quantitative and qualitative research to see what do we have going on in our district and how can we move forward. I went into the schools and talked with the teachers and asked 4 questions. What did we do well? What can we do better? What do we need to eliminate? And general questions and concerns in regards to diversity and inclusion. Due to COVID, we weren't able to speak with all the teachers, but we were able to speak with 4 buildings of teachers. So during the courageous conversations, I listened to teachers. I walked in the buildings with the principals, and I just listened while they spoke, and I typed. What we learned out of what did we do well collectively, we address cultural awareness events. We do well with that. We do well with Black History Month. We do well with Hispanic Heritage and Awareness Month. We do well with including our special ed students. We do well with celebrating veterans, and we do well with our extracurricular activities and clubs at the junior high and high school level. What can we do better? Well, the teachers made a point to note out we can diversify our staff, provide education about differences, eliminate barriers, improve communication and understanding, include students more with disabilities, and have consistency across the district. What should we eliminate? Biases, the culture shock, stereotypes, the fear of talking, and the us against them. They said we are not against the students, we are for them. And some of the thoughts, recommendations, and concerns when we had general conversation was more training was desired. They did not want to make ethical assumptions about students. They wanted to be aware of embrace differences and understanding generational and learned behaviors. So those were some of our key takeaways after working with the teachers. So we sat down with those takeaways and decided we want to implement some diversity and inclusion training in terms of microaggressions, biases, and privileges. We definitely want to bring a program or have training on bridges out of poverty. Bridges out of poverty focuses on the 3 mental models, which are poverty model, which is based on relationships, the middle class model, which is based on achievements, and the upper class model, which is based on connections. And I use this example. If you've ever heard someone say, well, why don't they work hard like me and my family did? We went to school and we had hard work. That is a statement that will probably come from somebody from an achievement class, the middle class model. But looking at bridges out of poverty, when you look at a poverty model or relationships, individuals in that model are doing the same thing. Everything is built on relationships. So if they're looking for a job or support, they're going to call someone that they know. It's all relationship building. So what we want to do is, as we're talking about bridges out of poverty or the hidden roles of different cultures, it's gaining the understanding across all 3 mental models and how can we work well with one another. So I'm actually in training this week to be a certified trainer for bridges out of poverty.
I remember, if I may, Shari, about 25 years ago, I remember as a 6th grade teacher back at Otis Elementary School, I went through some of the best training of my career was this Bridges Out of Poverty model. Ruby Payne is kind of the author of that, and just some fabulous stuff. So when this kind of came up, it just really struck me as a powerful model to use because it just talks about culture, and everyone brings that to the table, everyone. So that sets a nice place to start, and I think too, so it is very inclusive because it kind of helps us identify just cultural differences and where to start from. So we're looking forward to having Shari as a official trainer, train the trainer kind of role. So looking forward to that. You start this week, you said, Shari?
Today, yes.
Today?
Yep.
Okay.
Through Wednesday.
You're already smarter.
Yeah.
You're a good girl.
So can I ask, you said you had it when you were a 6th grade teacher.
Yeah.
Did it just kind of go by the wayside
Well,
for our district, or what? I mean, 'cause
I think we hit it pretty hard, and I remember we had Kathy Hunt.
Kathy Hamilton.
I'm sorry, Kathy Hamilton. Kathy Hamilton was a trainer that came, and I think we hit it hard for a couple years, and then I think like anything, there's the next thing, and there's the
Right.
next thing. So really, I think, the old folks like I would remember, but like me, but probably something we didn't sustain maybe as we should have. To answer
Yeah,
your
'cause,
question.
I mean, well, like anything else, even training, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Well, that's right. That's right.
I mean, just because the newest thing comes along doesn't mean that it's going to replace what's working well, especially if you said that was some of the best training you've had. And Denise,
Yeah. Here's an example. I remember in that training, one of the things they talked about for a student in poverty, relationships are way more important than anything else. That whole I don't know about, or I don't care what you know until I know that you care, that whole thing. And that, and I've seen it in my career now for a long time, that if you connect with a student, they will do it because they care about you. And a student in poverty doesn't recognize that middle class pathway. They don't know that middle class pathway, but they know relationships because they need those relationships to survive, right? Because they've got to have the things they need. So they need that through relationships. So that's just one of the things that I learned a long time ago that's going to be a part of this training, and then even more, obviously. So.
The teachers would like to also continue what we call the courageous conversations. We have cards. I have cards that I use in the city that I even use with the teachers, which what stands between us. These are difficult conversations that we bring to the table to have. They're questions that individuals may want to ask, but they're intimidated to ask for the fear of judgment. Some of the questions are, I pulled them out. Why don't you see color? We had great conversation about that. Other questions are, why do you talk about color so much? We had discussions regarding people that are people of color. Sometimes when they discipline their children or they're speaking with their children, they tell them, don't look at me. You don't look into the authority figure's eyes. But now when I come to school, the teacher's telling me, look at me. And the perplexity that the student now is facing. So we're having great conversations, and the teachers really wanted to have those authentic conversations and continue. So we will, using that what stands between us. We also are going to discuss the hidden rules of culture and what that looks like. And a lot of questions that we ask, what are the hidden rules when you walk in your own home that someone may not know, but they're the rules of your home? And a lot of times they're hidden rules within different cultures or different social classes that some of our students are coming to school with their hidden rules, but may not be the hidden rule that the teacher is actually living in or that the school system is built in. I use one when we come to discipline or engaging. There's some students, depending on where they live or their culture, where it might be the norm to have an aggressive conversation, I'll put with someone. But when you come to school, that's not the norm, where the school is kind of embedded in the achievement culture. So if we can decide to start to understand everybody's hidden rules and how can we work together. So that's what we're hoping that Bridges Out of Poverty will bring, and the courageous conversations. From there, my request to Mr. Detweiler was to build a diversity and inclusion strategic planning committee. The hope with that committee, I believe there's about 22, 23 individuals on right now. And the hope is that we can build little subcommittees at each building so that what we're implementing is district-wide. We're all speaking the same thing. We're working together.
I might add, if I may, Shari, that we just cracked the door that open, and we had 22 people just like that. They were ready, and I think Denise could attest. Sometimes we have to beg and plead and cajole people to be on a committee. What? Yeah, they usually aren't lining up. And I think Shari mentioned, if you did already, I forget, or I missed it, but you said that one of the things the teacher said that they want deeper conversation.
Deeper conversation.
They want to really get after this and not just skim across the top, but they're really ready to dig in and get after it. So I think that response to our committee request was an example of that readiness of our staff to really take a good hard look at this.
Mr. Detweiler, may I ask a quick
Please.
question? Do you want me to hold until would it be
No,
easier for you?
no, please do.
So of the 20-some people, which is wonderful, that volunteered, what kind of diversity are you seeing in the group? For the volunteers working on the topic, is a diverse group?
Yeah, actually, we were, if I may, we started looking at that group, and there's about every distinguished group you can imagine has representation either through the family or spouse or children, or we really were trying to be very aware of representation of all groups. So we got a really nice swath. Because I think what happened was, I think Shari's conversations with those staffs as she went from building to building really caught that attention of everyone saying, well, it's not necessarily just a race issue. It might be a sexual orientation, or it might be, well, you name it. I mean, just any group you can imagine. So I think we hit a nerve.
Wonderful.
And one thing that was an eye opener from the teachers. One teacher mentioned, she said, we're talking about, when we speak of ethnic minority, we're talking about Hispanic or we're talking about African American. And she said, what about the child that may be multiracial? Can we focus services on how we work with those students as well and not make them choose? So that was an eye-opener as well, and we're bringing that to the table in the diversity and inclusion strategic planning team.
I'm really glad to hear that it's a diverse group having a diversity conversation, because we struggled with that before. We wanted to have a good conversation, but there wasn't diversity in the conversation. So.
And even with that, diverse in the sense that we have individuals that will respond back that are coming out of an elementary building, middle school, high school. We have teaching staff, we have classified staff, we have administration staff. So again, very much giving us a very well-rounded conversation and discussion.
So when we look at implementing some diversity and inclusion across the district, some of the key things we're focusing on, actually inclusive hiring practices. Just with my higher ed background, and I had the conversation with Mr. Detweiler, I know in the past, maybe the school or different organizations within the community have been to colleges to help recruit. We want to take a different approach and actually meet with the administrator. So we want to find the local colleges in our areas and have conversations with their vice presidents of enrollment, with their chair of education, My request to Mr. Detweiler is, what is the next wave of retirement here? And that retirement wave, what subject area are those teachers coming out of? So when we go have those conversations, we can let the other schools know, this is what we have. We are interested. We want to have communication with students in your educational pipeline. Could you, refer them to us? Could they come and be interns? Just trying to build those relationships within the area. I know we're also looking at how we hire in terms of the hiring practices when people interview, looking at hiring teams, but that is down the road. And then if Denise would like to chime in at this time, there's a great program that we're all excited about when it comes to hiring, Grow Your Own.
Yes, thank you. I submitted a grant on behalf of the district on Friday afternoon. And this is a diversifying education, the profession of education in the state of Ohio. The opportunity for this grant the dollars will be used to grow our own. And specifically we are targeting non-certified current staff who are non-certified, who would be a diverse individual who then we will support if we are awarded the grant. We will use those dollars to support their education, to continue on and to gain those collegiate level courses, to come back to us, to Fremont City Schools, hopefully as a teacher. So we will for sure bring those individuals back along the way. We've talked to the colleges and universities that we're working with, that we want them to be part of internships and student teaching and observation hours, because we also believe within our research that the more we can not only attract, but the more support we can provide along the way, the more times they're in and out of our buildings in our district, the more comfortable they'll be, the more excited they'll be to return as a teaching profession. The advantage of the grant, one of the advantage pieces for us, is that these are already Fremont City School folks. These are people who live in our community, their children attend our district, they're already hired, they're already working a full-time position within our district. And so there's a lot of buy-in. We are very excited. I had a small handful, which is appropriate, I think, of staff members that responded to a large mass email that I sent out to the district. And so we went ahead and pushed forward with the grant. So we are very excited. We will know mid-March. And it is a 2.5-year run on the grant. So we will support as far into that education. And we've already started brainstorming for the next steps of what do we do after the end of the 2.5-year grant cycle. So I think we're pretty excited about that.
I have a question on that. I love the idea of providing funds to help them get the college credits they need to become certified. I think it's wonderful. Employers handle that differently once you make a financial investment in an individual's professional growth. Is it done in a measure of goodwill, or is it a contractual obligation then that guarantees the employer an opportunity to then employ them? A lot of them will say if we make the investment, then you have a 2-year employment commitment with that employer, and some just do it as a matter of goodwill. What are the thoughts there?
Our goal within the grant would be that certainly they would return to teach, to be hired within the district. Obviously, we're not in a position to make up positions or open positions or create positions in that capacity. So in the terms of the grant, we wrote that we strongly encourage them to return and that they will be considered for any open position to interview for that position at the time.
But there wouldn't be a contractual obligation
Not a hard
on their
commitment,
part.
yeah. Right.
Yeah,
No.
not within the
Goodwill.
grant cycle. And we would have to talk contractually, you know what I mean, as far as what that would look like at the time.
Okay.
And I need to clarify something too, if I may. I'll be right back with you, Vi. But for about a month ago, I started talking about a Grow Your Own program for students. I need to clarify this. We actually, when we saw this grant first come out, there was very little information about it. And I thought it was what the model I've had in my head for a while was get our high school students on that track early and then see them through that way. So it was more of a Grow Your Own from the student perspective. Well, we got clarification farther into the grant process that we actually asked, can we do this for students? They said, no, this is actually designed specifically for current employees, which is fine. So, but just so you know, we've sort of not stopped. And that's still my vision, is to, and we've talked to Tara and to Heidelberg, to create a rising teacher program that is our students. We have our early college program. So that right now is the pathway that we could, start working actually with eighth graders to start identifying them, get them on a general track to start taking some of the prerequisites they would need to be a teacher, working with Tara, and then right now Heidelberg could be some others too, just how to get our students onto that K-12 education pathway. But we believe we can do that despite the fact that there wasn't a grant involved. I was excited about the grant for that, but that actually had a different focus. But it doesn't mean that we've stopped that pathway. And Mr. Walker's taken a strong lead on that because he's kind of managed that early college pathway for us in the past. So just so you know, that hasn't gone away.
And along those lines, just to piggyback with that, so upon submittal by 5 p.m. on Friday of the first round of the grant, the second stage did come out, and that is the Rising Educator grant. It is a much smaller dollar amount, a very similar 2.5-year time frame, with a mid-March submittal for that grant. So yes, we will turn gears and go that route as well, because it will assist, I think, as that we employ that with our early college high school. Be a nice fit.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No problem. We've kind of been down the road before. We had a CAP program where that we were working with Heidelberg and Tiffin and BG, to try to grow our own, and we worked on that. The problem was after the students got their degrees, maybe stayed with us for a while and took off for more grants. But we did get there are several students that I know that were came out of that as teachers. So that would be an area where you could focus on how to retain
Yeah,
them.
retention is huge.
Columbus looks better, and wherever else, one isn't. Let's see.
Stay in Bowling Green, right?
Yeah. Well, Bowling Green, they've so most, in fact, I think all the ones that I know kind of moved out to other states and other. So somehow work on that area, because that was a weakness area. We did go through the program. It was awesome. We had regular trips with the students going to, working with the different universities and seeing the programs and working with that and working here. But, that was the weak link,
Sure,
the retention, keeping them after they.
absolutely.
And some stayed here, like the Alcott girls stayed here for a while, but then, they met somebody, fell in love, and
They did what? Did you say fall in love, right? That happened?
Philly. So we lost our awesome teacher,
Yep,
But and
Life
I
does
remember
happen,
when
doesn't it?
they were in kindergarten.
right,
But
Sure.
so that's something that
absolutely.
really needs.
And I think you're right.
Focus on.
That's always a challenge, but I still, in my heart, think we still stand a better chance with our own kids than not. But yeah, it's a gamble.
And I like the idea of working with the employees that are here, that are more likely to, stay in Fremont and just kind of move up in the ranks. I like that idea. Yeah. But I mean, we need the other students too, but.
And even doing research for the grant, I mean, I moved from Shari's numbers and the data that she had collected with our district and moved into our current year looking at our student population, and it actually increased another percentage point. I was up a little over 44% of our student population for this current school year that has a minority status of our student population, and the discrepancy to our teaching population at 0.05.
Yes, 0.05.
So we
Start.
definitely, we've acknowledged, we've done the research, we can look at those numbers, and we are to the point of now it's time to put some action into place, and I think that is really a good part of our direction here.
Yes, ma'am.
So is it not allowed, or is it possible, I like Chantel's idea that, okay, we're going to help you and support you, but in return, we want some time back.
Yeah, we're looking into
whether
that
it's
by.
a year or 2-year
Yeah,
contract.
maybe some,
agreement.
I'm not sure
Contract
how
language we'll have to-
legal you can make it, but I do think you can have at least an agreement, that we work this through. And right now, if you think about the CCP track, if we have students in high school taking college classes, that's already covered for all students, so there wouldn't be anything extra about those students for now. But anything that we could arrange through grants or otherwise from high school out, from the 2-year to the 4-year degree would certainly be somewhere we could explore that sort of, hey, how about a, commitment. We already are a district that, because of our poverty rate, we have a loan forgiveness program for teachers who come with certain kind of loans, certain federal loans that can be forgiven so much per year. So that's also another thing we can use, as long as you communicate, hey, if you take this kind of loan, if this is what you need, your pathway back to us will help you cover that loan.
I was picturing that kind of an obligation if we do that, because you can certainly do the goodwill method too. Their employers do it, all different. But I was thinking more along the current employed, the grow your own among the,
Right.
yeah,
like
that group, not students, but that group.
Right. Yeah, sure.
And then I think our two final points we would like to share with you with diversity and inclusion. I'm going to speak about the Minority Youth Summit and then speak a little to our diversity and inclusion team and look to Mr. Detweiler and Denise to step in there. So we are planning a few Minority Youth Summits. One Minority Youth Summit that we are planning is centered around mental health in collaboration with Terre Community College and is led by an alum. Her name is Adrienne Robinson. She is currently earning her PhD down at Georgia State University, I believe.
I think so.
I was just in communication with Adrienne yesterday. We have been working on that, but we've had to kind of scale back with COVID because we prefer to have it in person. So seeing what this is going to look like either over the summer or next fall. And then I know Terre Community College wants to partner with Fremont City Schools and work on another Minority Youth Summit, which I believe will be centered around social justice. So we are starting to develop those programs or summits to engage our students of color towards that spectrum of success and getting involved in college, pushing them towards education or mental health to be therapists as well. With our diversity and inclusion team, one thing that we will add, the retention piece. This team actually focuses on, I think we started out focusing on the barriers, and then we were able to put those barriers up on the wall. And we have a lot of areas that we're going to work on to provide strategic planning for Mr. Detweiler, if you all would like to chime in there.
No, that's right. And actually, Denise and I talked about that today. We've got basically these large charge papers. As a committee, we just said, okay, what are keeping our kids from being successful? All of our kids. What are those barriers? And now our plan is to go back and say, is to group those, and how do we then prioritize and come up with ways to solve those problems as a committee? So that's sort of our next step. And as I mentioned last time, then that committee then will report up to the district leadership team, which will then come back to the board. So.
And we are, I believe, even on that committee working for changes that we can do next year in terms of in our library with our books. What type of books are we selecting? Are there people of color in those books, representation? I believe there's a course.
And great segue. Thank you. So an additional piece is making sure that we have that representation for our students of color to build the knowledge and the skill set so that our students can feel comfortable. All of our students can gain information and knowledge. So if you remember back December and January when we talked about those new courses at the high school and that course description guide, and Mr. Gorbitz talked about some of the work of CQCC, one of our new courses that will be offered beginning next fall is Social Issues in Multicultural Literature. And it will be an English credit. It's a semester-long course, and it will allow for some very diverse conversation, some intense reading, and it will give representation to a multitude of cultures and groups of people, and it will really, hopefully, be a very wide, eye-opening experience for all of our students who choose to take this course. So we're very excited about that new offering. We've also been working really since July on a monthly or quarterly basis, not quite monthly, but Mr. Detweiler and I have been meeting with the NAACP's Education Committee. And their subcommittee have been in contact with the district, and so we've been going back and forth, been able to look at literature that's used in the classrooms, 612. And also what I've done with the committee is tried to pinpoint standards and topics that are hit with our English language arts and our social studies content, and where some of those topics and content standards piece come in that the committee has now taken my list and they're looking for individuals that would be comfortable to speak, to be a guest speaker in our classroom and give a different perspective to some of those concepts. So teacher teaches what's in the textbook, teacher teaches from the standard, but to be able to have, whether it be virtual or in person or a variety, to have a guest that can relate differently and share a different perspective, a different piece of insight. So we're very excited and waiting for them to pull some of those names and those videos and topics and come back to us. And we will embed those into our classroom and put those individuals in front of kids. So that will be a very positive piece.
I love the multicultural literature course. I think that's wonderful. And when that is put together, when you have your book list, let me know. I'm always looking for a good book. And I think as we educate our children, we got to educate ourselves too. That'd be great.
Well, I'm glad to be back home. It's a great day to be a giant. And I always end with diversity and inclusion on this note, one of my favorite quotes, and I like to share with you all. Be the reason someone feels welcomed, seen, heard, valued, loved, and supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Shari.
Thank you.
Hey, Shari, you're welcome to Vamonos if you would like to, but you're also welcome to stay. We never would turn you away. And Board, I'm sure you can tell what Shari has meant to us. Just have somebody with her skills and her background and what she's done at the college level and help us all keep focused. I think sometimes we all have these best intentions, but sometimes just getting it done and having someone to help you organize that and keep you on the right track and keep you focused has been invaluable. So, Shari, just publicly, thank you very much for what you've done so far and the good work we're going to do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think along that lines, it's like what you said, having that person that's dedicated to that, whether it's at the school, with the city. I mean, it would be like if you had to run curriculum as the superintendent. No, you have a curriculum person that does that because you need that. So with this, it's such a big issue.
Yep.
And it takes care of the entire district. So, yeah.
Huge. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. That's it for that part.
Okay.
We do have now there's a second part. If you remember last month or last meeting, we had Denise had come and done a nice job of presenting sort of some academics and some kind of a status checkup with how we were doing. And then the board, I think 3 of you specifically, had some very specific questions about some other things maybe. So we went back. I say we like I have a mouse in my pocket. Denise went back and kind of dug into it, and we've been talking about it and trying to see, okay, how can we maybe show more comparisons. And Vi, you had a question about 6-8, and Tom, I can't remember what specific yours was, but I know she's got it all ready to roll, so I'm going to turn it over to her if that's okay.
I put together a packet.
Be careful.
Whoa.
Yeah.
We need you.
I will talk about the pieces in your packet, but some of them could be large and overwhelming, and I didn't want to just talk. Sometimes I think it's helpful to have something in front of us as we are going through the data. So I hopefully then together we'll be able to work through these things. And I sincerely hope that I was able to take your questions. Tom, I know you had a question. Vi, I think I got your question. And Chantel, I think I got both of yours. I think we're going to be good. But please don't hesitate if there's something else. As I'm sharing, if there's something else you'd like to see, I can certainly pull that together and bring back. The first item in your packet, I believe, addresses Ms. Laird's question. And specifically, she was asking about the difference with the K-3 literacy. And she was referring to some other districts that possibly were exempt or didn't produce that cohort, didn't have that data for the report card. And then how that leads into the 3rd grade reading guarantee and what that can look like for students. So This can be a reference piece for you that you can definitely take a look at. This comes right from ODE. So first of all, just a reminder, the K-3 literacy component of the report card, of which there's a new name, it is now called Improving At-Risk K-3 Readers. Same component though, will be on the report card. And the way that component is derived is that we must, by law, within the first 6 weeks of school, perform a reading diagnostic test for all of our students in K-3. Must be done immediately at the start of the school year. It becomes that baseline test for the diagnostic component. That data is then used to generate the component for the K-3 literacy on the report card. The only students in that data that end up rolling to the report card are students who are deemed to be not on track based on that diagnostic assessment. So for example, we test all of our kindergartners at the start of the school year, first 6 weeks of school, and let's say that 30% are deemed to be not on track. That 30% of our student population is our kindergarten cohort. We then go through the year of kindergarten, we teach them up, we do interventions, we do other diagnostics throughout the year, we keep checking with them. And as they come into first grade, again, within the first 6 weeks of school, we must complete that diagnostic. And then the data is only looking at, the computations are divided to just that 30%, and that's not our real number, I'm just being arbitrary, 30% of our cohort that was deemed to be not on track in kindergarten. Are they on track now? And then that is the number that is reported at the fall of first grade. So if you make an impact, our student population that was at risk in kindergarten was deemed to be not on track, and everything's coming together, we have interventions and instruction that are in place, and they're now on track at the start of first grade, that's then that you'll see that cohort number decline. And that's your goal every year, is that cohort number declines until they're in third grade. And then that's where the third grade reading guarantee comes into play. And our students, then that second assessment, we know that they have 2 times during the school year for that assessment, a fall and a spring. And then there's another one in the summer. There's also some of the alternative assessment that can be used. And our goal at that point is to always make sure that our third graders are ready to be promoted on to grade 4. The challenge, and sometimes the component that does not always appear to be equitable on the report card, is twofold. Number one, a district never gets credit for the students who come to school ready to go, who are on track and stay on track. That data point only ever looks at the students that are not on track. The second item is, for a district that potentially is more affluent, has more resources at a very young age, who has a very strong preschool component, they may come into kindergarten and have a very small percentage of their kindergartners that are deemed to be not on track. Therefore, then they progress, which I think was the example you were referring to, they progress in this K-3 literacy component on the report card, because their number is so small. And if you see, I underlined for you, if a district had fewer than 5% of their kindergartners, then they would receive the NR, the not reported score. So if you do compare to other districts and you see that, and you think, well, do they not have to play in this game? Yes, they have to play in the game, but their number potentially is so low that it's just not reported in that capacity. Any questions about that aspect? Did I answer the question for you?
You absolutely did. And for anybody that was watching, I hope that, they understood. I think it's unfortunate that it's such a complex thing. And, our parents in the common households look at this and don't know that. They don't know why there is a difference in a district of affluence versus a district with a higher poverty rate. They don't, when you get to have the conversation with them, they get it. But just these reports that get put on the front page of the newspaper come with no explanation, and so many conclusions get drawn.
Yeah, it's true.
Especially when you start tossing out words like cohort.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, anybody not in education, they're like, what?
What does she mean by that?
What's a cohort? What does that play into?
You're right.
I just had
lingo.
one question on it. So
Certainly.
if you take your scenario where, let's say 30% of your kindergartners were at risk or not on track, and they're the cohort that is looked at then in first grade, where does because we all know that the state is so concerned with the education of every child, what happens to the point, are we not, I know we are as a district, but nothing for them, for ODE, where does it come into, okay, so great, you had a district that the kindergartners did well, but what about if the kids got behind in first grade? I mean, because if they're only looking at the cohort of the percentage of
right.
kindergartners that didn't do well,
Right.
which was 30%, but that doesn't mean that a kid that was in that 70% in kindergarten doesn't become at risk in first grade.
Sure.
Correct. And that cohort does adjust at the fall of every school year.
Right.
So, because then let's say that first grader, maybe they were on track in kindergarten, they came through, maybe the learning didn't progress in the same manner, they didn't make a full year's growth, they come into first grade, same assessment at the beginning of the year for our diagnostic, and now are determined to be not on track, they are entered into that cohort.
So it is year to year.
Okay.
It is every
so
year.
It does
Yeah.
change
Second,
as that
third,
goes.
there's
It's
a
not just,
grade
Yes.
track.
it's
So
just
you-
not that those 30%,
No.
those
Correct.
kids.
So you'll see
Gotcha.
the K
Okay.
to 1, the 1 to 2, the 2 to 3, and then your goal is 3 and out.
Gotcha. Okay.
The fourth
Thank
grade.
you.
Great
being the
question.
cutoff,
Thank
yeah.
you.
You know, I think with the whole reporting and the comparison thing, there's a hidden blessing in COVID to help us with that. That the hidden blessing is this. Those scores from one district to another don't just produce results that tell us how well do our students know the content of the subject matter compared to the other school, but really because the way the tests are taken, it shows how well do they navigate the technology. So access to technology is a big deal in how they do on those. And the hidden blessing of COVID with having to teach remotely and have such a focus on how to get more technology in children's hands is, I think, a hidden blessing with this whole conversation. And as a result, will help our children do better in a world technology based because we were forced as a nation to get more of it out there. I think they will do better because of that.
I agree.
Now, they did wasn't it only like a year ago, they did change that third grade reading test that you can do paper now,
Can opt for
correct?
paper, and we do.
We do.
Because that was always
A struggle.
one of my daughter, I mean,
Yes.
they can navigate playing a game, but to take a reading test on a computer for a third grader was beyond me. I'm like, seriously, how does this make any sense whatsoever?
Yeah.
So I was glad that they at least opened it up to where you could opt to have the paper, which makes more sense.
Is that on all grades and all subject matter?
No.
That's what I
Just-
thought.
that's the only
So we're
option.
still,
Right.
still.
For
Third
the
grade.
reading guarantee at least.
Yes.
But yeah, to your point, yeah, it's great that kids had to.
And I think to Chantel's point too, is that as we can become more one-to-one, or we're getting really close, as those kids have done it now since they're 5 years old on up, we can no longer do that on there if we've got the computer skills where they need to be. Yeah.
Fremont's children's ability is just as strong and promising and wonderful and beautiful as any other communities. Their access was different, though.
That's a barrier. I mean, we've talked about that. There's just, there are barriers, a hurdle that some other children don't have. That's right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, the next item in your packet, Mrs. Ray, this was your question. You had asked specifically about grades 6 through 8 and our school's PLP virtual students that were working. And I believe your question was looking at the discrepancy potentially between A grades and F grades and the impact from the student perspective of how that could potentially look. So you asked me about last fall data, the fall semester. And to be very honest with you, we are unable to pull the fall data. Once we turned the corner and closed the semester, the company archived that data. We will be able to retrieve it again at the end of the school year, but I cannot access fall semester data currently. So what I pulled instead for you, what we're looking at here is what we have up to this point in second semester. So this is from January 4th. We pulled the data last Wednesday, so February 17th. And what you're looking at, I broke down grades. You can see the grade 6, 7, and 8, and you can see the core content areas. That is a number of students that had earned that grade, and that is an average number of minutes that number of students spent on their content to earn their grade. So if you, a couple takeaways that maybe you will look at, the average number of minutes for our students who are earning B's and C's, our kids are putting in time. Mm-hmm. Now, on average, remember that schools PLP is an at-will learning opportunity for our students. So we have to be very cautious. We allow our students, we set the program up. We say that there might be 110 lessons in the semester, and students can move through at their own pace. It's designed to work for them, and we are here to support them. So there is not a way to say, I could say halfway by end of third quarter. But we also know that we have students that are developing their own time management system. I've talked to students personally that would say to me, you know what, Mrs. Herr, I really like science. Like, that's my thing. So I'm going to do all my science first because that's what I like. And then I'll worry about my math. So if I get in and look at the student on February 17th and I see that they haven't started their math, technically, yes, they have an F in math. But they still have 3/4 of the semester left at them. So I wouldn't term them to be a failure at this point. They're managing their time and working at their will, which is what we have asked them to do. So every student is doing it just slightly different. On average, if we would expect a student that is 100% virtual working at home to probably be doing 2 to 3 hours of coursework in a day. Again, that could vary. I've talked to high school kids that say they might skip 2 or 3 days and then they sit down and they work for 6 or 7 hours. If you look at the bottom, I'm able to show you there the number of students and the average number of the minutes that are applied to those contents. The other thing I would caution you in this data poll is if you look all the way to the right and you see the final column that says no progress, that is a number of students at that grade level and content that have not initiated their learning yet.
Oh.
Now, we could go back to that scenario of that at-will educated student that is saying,
Procrastinators.
I'll get there. I'm going to do this one first. But I also think that we also have to consider, at our last work session in January, I shared with you the work of some of our middle school team that went door to door in the second week of the semester to knock on doors and leave cards and said, please call me because your child hasn't started. And we're in the second week of the semester, so we really got to get going. So there is concern there as well. In talking with the building leadership, we can pinpoint this down and look specifically at students.
Question. Okay. I'm probably seeing it, but my eyes aren't focusing. What are the total number of students that we're dealing with? It's saying how many have language arts, but what percentage of the total number? And then are these, like, you understand what I'm saying? How many kids are we working with? That we could say 11?
I don't have an exact number for grade 6, 7, and 8. I would say on average 250.
Yeah, we remember
grade level?
as a K-12, and it's pretty consistent across grade. We went from 300 students to about 200 students K-12.
Okay.
Total.
No, wait.
No, per grade level.
Well, I'm
Sorry,
talking-
We're talking per grade level.
Grade level. I
For
apologize.
years, we said
Right.
300 in a grade level,
Right.
but we're less
Right.
than that at this
Right.
point.
No, I'm trying to think. I'm sorry.
What percentage of the student population? Maybe that's just a
Yes.
general. Do you remember? Because you gave us those numbers.
We went from about a
before.
third to about 2/5 at semester. all virtual. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Denise? Thank you. Sorry, I got my.
And Denise, the date range, so this is the data from January 1st through.
January 4th, which was the first day of the semester, through February 17th. We pulled the data last Wednesday to prepare.
So if I
for
go
it.
60 days, which is actually long at 3 hours, you would target that generally to do well, you'd expect 180 hours by now of login time. So if that's traditionally what it would take to be successful, that 180 hours compared to what we're looking at right now. And while I understand it's at will and the procrastination may come in at the end, I don't know of too many statistics that would show us that method leads to success.
Right.
Especially for this age group.
Yes.
So, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So in sixth grade, say for instance,
About 250 kids, I think, for this building, because I think we have about 1,000 students in middle school. So we have about 2/5 of them or so about 250 kids. So divide that by 3, we're at 80 kids
Per grade.
per grade.
okay, so out of that 80 then.
Yes, ma'am.
In the
Right.
language arts, 11 got an A and 10 got a C. So is that,
Right, so even going across there is 15, 25,
if I
26.
totaled it up, that would be,
74.
Yeah, so we're close to 80 kids per grade level.
Yeah.
so these numbers are representative of like the 80 students, and out of that 80.
That's correct.
11, okay.
That's right.
So I guess one question I would have, not anything to do with the numbers. How in the world does that company archive data that's 2 months old?
Yeah.
Well, they're
This
with.
current school year? I mean, that's crazy.
Correct. And I think part of it, and to be fair to the company, it grew very quickly
Right,
in July.
right.
This was an online platform that had this established and worked with a handful of districts, and now is working
Took
with
off.
many districts across
Right.
the state. So they have grown. They've been wonderful working with us. They've listened. They've taken our suggestions. They've made changes. So all of those are positive. There's a connection that once, because we closed our semester, we did not allow our students in January to go back and work on the first semester of
Right.
content. So when we closed that, it closed for everything.
But
And so they just
But
set
for
it
the
aside.
district not to have access to that,
Yeah.
I mean, everything is based off of history and education when it comes. I mean, the state report card is based on history.
Right.
Correct.
And this is only 2 months ago history, and
And we will have access to it at the end of the school year. We'll be
Right,
able to look
which-
at both
and I
semesters, be
get
able
it,
to
they
look at a
grew
whole year.
fast,
But yeah, so it is one of the negative impacts right now.
So if we take a look at, let's just take sixth grade, for example, and if we go over to the F column, if we figure 80 students, 48 of the 80 have an F in language arts, 45 of the 80 have an F in math, 47 of the 80 have an F in science, and 31 of the 80 have an F in social studies. That's an average between 34 point something and 50% of the students in that grade have an F.
Right now.
Now-
yep.
Or subject you pick.
And I would agree with you, and I would just take us one step further within that data analysis. If we look at those 48 language arts Fs, 23 of them have not started. So 25 of those students are averaging 8 minutes of work and are accumulating that F. So that might, if we pull those, if we remember to pull that out, that may impact us a little bit different, because that could be my procrastinators that haven't initiated yet. It may be my students that are not getting busy.
And this is the conversation that's pervading our entire state. It was on another meeting
Yes.
today. And that just how do we get these kids caught up? And it's going to be a combination, and we're met again today and strategizing on just how do we get these kids caught up. So it's combination of enhanced summer school, obviously everywhere we can, But also with this ESSER 2 funds, and Ira and I talked about this a little bit today, is we can see even going into the fall, just a small army of tutors with this ESSER dollars to really get in there and break kids into small groups, identify where the weaknesses are and get after it. And then I'm going to be honest with you too, I've been struggling, and I know some of my soup friends have also been struggling on these kids. They won't, they will be tough to get them into summer school. I mean, if you can kind of picture that child, he's struggling at home now, he's feeling defeated. Getting them voluntarily into summer school is going to be a real challenge. We've talked about the retention letter, and now the conversations is, okay, do we kind of hold up that retention? Well, I don't know if that's the right thing too, because it's been a unforeseen, unprecedented kind of thing. We just can't say, well, we're going to hold back 50 kids per grade level. Not sure that's wise either. Now, obviously, there'll be some on the bubble. They're doing nothing. There'll be some conversations case by case. But what I really think I see as the best pathway forward is once we get them back in school on a regular basis, not only this spring with getting them back in with the ones we have, but for the all virtual kids that we get back in the fall, is just get after that with extra time, with extra bodies in the fall. Tutors. Yes, ma'am.
It's back again.
Yep.
Okay. Is it possible possibly with the grant we've been into this a whole year. We started like last March, and March will be a year, and these students have not, it's kind of left on them, and how motivated are kids if, it's snowing and they want to play outside or they want to play on their tablet or whatever, not to do it, versus being in school and having that oversight of a teacher, or I saw where that there was some tutoring that was going to be offered to. That was encouraging to me. I think these kids need to see a person some way, and a hands-on. So if it's at all possible, if that's something that we could target, a way to offer these kids, even though I know it's a virtual thing and they've chosen that route. But a lot of the kids are just lost, like 43% of these kids don't have a clue. And some of the brighter kids are, having difficulty because they don't have that teacher to say, okay, how much is negative, or what is, and to say, I don't understand that. Can you help me? Everybody's just on their own. So the numbers, as far as I'm concerned, are good compared to the lack of total teacher hands-on support for this segment population from 6 through the whole middle school thing, where kids are going through all kinds of craziness anyway, and just in pre-adolescence and adolescence. So if there's any kind of way that we could break this barrier and possibly hire tutors that could just work. We know teachers are overwhelmed, that could just teach or work with this population.
We're on the same page exactly, Brian. That's what I think too. I think it's going to be that surrounding these kids with support, and I see that really happening in the fall, best case. We even considered, can we just say, well, you are no longer being successful at home? But I've not gotten to the point where I think I could look a family in the face and say, you have to come to school in a COVID situation, because there's health issues and risks and all those other things. But I've been struggling with this. How do we get those kids to engage when I can't say, okay, this isn't working for you, you have to come back to school, because I'm not comfortable yet saying, okay, grandma's ill, grandma's whatever, I just say, okay, you're back in school with that risk at home. So I really think, and this is where I'm getting too far more and more in my head, is we take these ESSER funds that we're getting from the government and really ramping up our support staff and support for these kids as they get back into school in the fall. I don't think an extended school year, that was one of the things that the government threw out, was extended school year, literally going longer into the summer. I just think there's too many things there. For one, we're all exhausted. The teachers are kind of toasted and the kids are toasted. I don't think there'd be a difference in the status of these kids this spring, right? So the other thing was extended school day, and I'm not sure, we did talk about that a little bit again today, is maybe even next year, stretching the day, paying the teachers more, and giving ourselves a few more minutes of instruction during the day. I mean, all those things are still on the table as we consider this mountain of work that we have to do to get these kids caught up. But right now, if I'm thinking that what makes it the most sense to me is just have lots of hands on deck next fall when these kids show back up and just do the best we can to get them caught up as quickly as possible.
I have a thought to piggyback on what Vi said, which I agree with you wholeheartedly. You described two different instructional styles with the virtual environment. One completely independent, on your own pace, and so on. And the other was very teacher driven. They had to be logged in at certain times, and they
Right.
they could still do virtual.
That's our K-5 model currently.
But it was
right.
set. I think, in my opinion, in looking at the data, it is the independent learners who are suffering the most. That's where we're seeing the failure to thrive and succeed. Walk me through the barrier in switching the families that need virtual for health reasons, because I agree with you. If there is a risk, they need that. But the method of virtual.
Right.
Can we see this does not work. So even though, and you mentioned before, and I get it from a financial perspective, parents chose this, we paid for it, so they got to use it. Mr. Detweiler, if you buy a faulty piece of equipment that hurts people, you buy the next one. I mean, that's a cost of doing business. It's something we tried. When it comes to the care of children, and you know I'm very financial oriented with the care of children. I can't sit with that, well, we already bought it, so you're stuck with it. So
I would be very cautious to say that it doesn't work or it's not working, because I hear from parents just as many that are not happy. I hear from parents who this is excelling with their child. This works very well for their child. They're very happy with this setup. So I think we have to be very, very cautious in making that determination. I think that there's definitely both within our population. And along those lines, that I don't want us to forget that we have tied for every one of our families that chose this option. We have devised a schedule. We have made sure that they continue to be Fremont City School students, and we have tied Fremont City School educators to that child. So there is that opportunity for online learning, for virtual learning. Every one of our middle school and high school students that are involved in our school's PLP and at-home learning program have an opportunity throughout the course of the day that they can interact and work with that grade level content area teacher. And there's a specific time in the day. It's etched out, it's publicized, it's known. Now I understand too, I've heard from a lot of my high school students that say to me, oh, but Mrs. Hurd, I can work right now. I'm working. I'll get to my schoolwork, later in the day, but I'm at work when Mrs. Muffler's available in third period to talk to me about my biology. Okay, my student, we got to consider all of our priorities at that piece as well. Do you have to work every day during third period when Mrs. Muffler's available for you? Can we juggle your schedule? Can we look at that? There's lots of opportunities for us to brainstorm and support. But we have teachers that open up that Zoom and are open for 42 minutes.
I don't question the teachers' efforts. I really don't think this is a reflection, that this is in no way a performance result of educators. It is
I would agree.
Not. This is the performance results of students with this model. And I think you actually reiterated what I said. Mm-hmm. For every student that's failing at this, there's one that's doing great. That means 50% are failing. And I understand that we don't want to take away something that 50% are thriving on. But I think as a board, we have an obligation when we recognize that 50% that's failing and say this model doesn't work. We need to find something different for them. And what you've described, Denise, is a wonderful accessibility and flexibility on behalf of the teachers to be available. But again, in that model, that requires the student or the parent to make the initiative. Hence the self-motivated, self-driven, self-taught. It's right in line. It's the same reason why they're not logging on. is the exact same reason why they're not calling on the teacher when it's available. It's because it's self-initiated. The other model, I wonder if it might behoove us to consider together those who are going to stay virtual, even if your performance level is this and you want to stay virtual, it's no more independent learning. You need to go to this is the set time to log on, this is the set time to participate. And I fully understand that they're student working, but at no point did the Fremont City Public Schools take a vocational model, ever. We did not become a work during the school day education facility. And I don't think that we should be. So they're going to need to make a choice. As a student of the public school, the way it's structured here, we are students during school time. And if you choose to be a vocational student, that's fine. There is a vocational school that has that model available.
Well, the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders' work isn't really the issue. The issue is doing it.
Exactly.
There's nothing preventing them from doing it other than possibly an inability to work independently. And the lack of structure that's inherent in this type of a model isn't conducive to that type of a student performing, because they don't do it independently.
I really think we're at a point long enough, and it goes to the heart of getting those kids caught up, and we don't wait till next year to do it.
Right.
Because for every month that they're behind, there's that much more. And if we continue, even though we put the cost into this model,
Yeah.
it's going to add to how many more hours later we're going
Right.
to have to spend and incur other costs to get them caught up.
And I would say the cost of this program is probably the least factor, the smallest factor of all of them. Right now, it's how do I manage let's just take the students here as 8th grade pod. These 4 teachers have, they'll have, 2/3 of their students every day coming up next week. They have a full day and one free period during that day, then they're available to support students at home. One of the things that we tried to, 6 through 12, be a little leery of is having that burden on the teachers to teach an entire day at school and then try to teach at home at the same time. So that's why K-5, we actually, if you know, we took the students, and we luckily had about 1/3 in each grade level. So we took out of each building 2 that stayed in, and 1 went all virtual with a group of kids, which is the model that we think is a little better. I'm not denying that at all. But it was a decision to dedicate that teacher for an all virtual group and have them all day. And obviously it gets up here, and I've got math specialists, science specialists, English, social studies. So now you need 4 content area teachers at different times during the day to handle those kids. And I'm starting to get my head around what that would take to take these students from the PLP program and then get this group of teachers to, okay, now I've got to set up 4 new periods by subject per 8th grade on 3 different teams. It explodes pretty quickly into I don't know how to manage it. And I know that sounds like an awful answer because there are kids on the other end of it. And I get that, but I'm also not sure how to actually do it.
I don't know that it's possible, because here's the thing. So Tia is an at-home teacher for
Right.
2nd grade. So she only has at-home kids. And I can tell you, even in that model, there are specified times for her kids to log in to talk with her every single day.
Right.
I can tell you right now, out of her, whatever she has, 15, 18 kids, there are quite a few kids that do not log in when they have to, when they're supposed to, each and every day. There are kids in 2nd grade that are just as far behind as these kids in middle school. And it's a different model that seems to probably work better because they have a designated teacher, but they're at home. It still means they have to log in. It still does. Whether it's the parents making sure of that or the kids, whatever age level, it's still the same thing. In my mind, all of this shows us that the kids that strive on this would strive if they're in this classroom right here. And the kids that are failing are going to have a better chance at not failing if they're sitting in a chair in this.
Sure.
In my mind, this just shows that we are a public education system. If I wanted my kid to be an online student, she would be enrolled in an online virtual academy. And that's what I would do. And I get it that I'm saying take your money away from our district. But we are a public school system that's meant on teachers face-to-face with their students. And I get it, there's a pandemic. But my gosh, by next fall, we have to, this just shows that we have to, that's the model that works.
Right.
And we can say everything about technology and kids being online. I get it that colleges do that, but man, you're talking different age groups. Tia's on the phone with the other second grade at-home teachers. And sometimes they're in tears because they're like, how are these kids gonna survive third grade? And they're doing, I can vouch for those teachers. They are working tirelessly at trying to figure out everything. And I'm sure all the teachers, I'm not saying just second grade by any means, but it still comes down to the fact that the kid has to do the work. And if you can't be there to help Johnny with his math homework right there in front of him, he's not going to do it. You've got kids here that are failing language arts and they're putting 8 minutes in. And I get it that some of them haven't done anything or anything. 8 minutes is going to accomplish nothing for anything in your entire life. You can't put 8 minutes worth of work into something and hope to accomplish it, unless it's brushing your teeth, But we've got to be in person. At this middle school, high school level, you would have to have a teacher for every type of course to be online to be able to teach those kids to be at home. And
I wonder, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No,
there's not the solution we all want available today. I get it. There's not. But as we seek a blend, might it be this? The parents who have a vulnerability to the pandemic and requested, because that's the reason they wanted the virtual at the time, and they still have that need. Continue, but look at what could we do different if they're going to continue. But I'm at the point, Mr. Detweiler, that I'm struggling in spite of staffing. I'm struggling with the parents who chose this back in, when did they have to make that choice? November?
Yep.
Yeah.
Who back in November said, I think I want to try the virtual. And because they made that choice in November and their child's failing and they're begging, you have on campus now, and I really want my child in it. They're failing. Please let my child in it. We're still telling them no. Simply because, well, you made your choice back in November. And I understand the whole staffing issue, but I'm starting to have a bigger and bigger problem. The more calls and complaints, and John, these are heartfelt, crying parents, grandparents, my child's failing. He would do so much better if he could be in the classroom. That's available now. I based my decision in November on what we knew in November. We know so much more about the pandemic now than we did even in November. These other students are giving access and my child's not, and we know it, and they're failing, and we know it. And the method of teaching that they're asking for is available, and we know it. And we're still saying no. And I am having a harder problem, especially because the timing of it. The governor's agreement to put teachers ahead of other people with vulnerabilities in age group was for the purpose that our kids got back to school. And the deal he made was, if you offer on campus to all students, I will let your district go ahead in line of other people. When that offer was made, that deal was made, that was well after the commitment date that those parents are being held to.
But it was also made for hybrid schools as well, not just all in. And we were hybrid at the time. Is that your point?
My point is this: you have a common household, John, that hears the governor talk, and they hear the governor say, if the school district agrees to make online or hybrid, or hybrid, we're not at hybrid as of March 1st. The on-campus option available here is all day.
Right.
okay? As of January, when he started making this deal with everybody, they hear that. They're like, okay, well, the hybrid and the on-campus is available, so I should be able, it's supposed to be made available to every student. He didn't say, if at some point in the 2020 year you made it available, you can jump ahead. It was, if I do this from here forward, every student will be given an opportunity for hybrid or on campus. And from the day he made that forward, every student was not. Those who had made their choice back in November were forced to stay with that. They weren't given the same opportunity under the governor's directive that other students were. And I am having a difficult time with the response justifying the school's position to those parents and those parents and students, the longer this goes. Mm-hmm. I would like my colleagues to consider a motion to go back and let those parents whose children were on virtual have the option, if they want their child on campus, to come on campus.
Well, let me just, if I may, before you do that, just describe what that's going to mean. We're going back in full next Monday. So I had some very large classes, couple over 31 in the K through 5 group. So I had to disrupt some of the virtual teachers. I had to shut down their sections because I need now more bodies in the building. Now, I'm saying it's bad, but what I did then is I had to take all those students who'd had that teacher for 3/4 of the year, say, you no longer get that teacher. I've got to ship you over to this teacher. Now you have to learn that. So I disrupted 3 classrooms for next Monday in order to restart school. So I shuffled, about 6 classrooms, teachers, kids, families, shuffled them. If we do this, it'll happen again. And I just want you to make sure you know the impact. It's going to reshuffle what we already have working. Might add, I just want to throw this out. I know these heartbreaking stories. I know, Chantal, I promise you I do. But I had my administrators all on a Zoom meeting last week, and I asked them, ladies and gentlemen, are you hearing much about kids wanting back in from virtual into, and not one of them told me that they had heard anything. Now, I'm not saying that there's not there. I know, I'm not saying that you haven't heard from them, but I don't know the pervasiveness of that. I want to make sure that I don't know what it is.
It's not as impacting, then the shuffle shouldn't be significant.
Right, and if it's a small number, right, given.
Yes,
right?
So if the complaints we're hearing, if it's really the number of parents who would really prefer to have their kids back, you're not hearing is great, then it shouldn't be as difficult to go ahead and let them come back.
Right. Now, one thing, too, that we have made available, if a child is suffering socially, emotionally, we've told every parent that calls, and I haven't had for a little while, that if they have a doctor's note saying this child really will do better in school, that's an automatic ticket in. No questions asked, we make it work. And that's sort of been just a little bit of a gatekeeper. I mean, and I know that sounds like a horrible thing, but we're trying to manage the administrative area here and also the educational needs. So that's been something that we've honored from the start. Mm-hmm. So we have made that available.
I know that, John, but when we take a look at the at-risk kids, the kids who are more likely to fail, are the ones who may not have parents who have flexible jobs and are affluent enough to hire at-home tutors and do all of this. They're really on their own and they're failing. And if that's their condition of life, I mean, how many of them actually have a family doctor? Or how many
Sure.
of them have to just go into, how many go into the ER? My daughter used to be an ER nurse. Your number one patient there are people who don't have doctors.
Right.
They have an immediate concern.
Sure.
They're not going to think, well, I'm going to go to the doctor and go to the ER and pay. I can't pay that much money in order to do this. So I think the caveat you've given them at the time, I get why you did, and I'm not angry with
Right.
anybody's decision. I know, John.
The whole thing's a mess.
You have had the
It's
most difficult job on earth.
Yeah.
Because it impacts the most vulnerable, most precious people on earth, and that's our children.
Yep.
So you've had the most difficult job. I truly respect that. But their pass in order to get their kids to be able to come back into their public school is not accessible in the way that it's been given to all of those students who may want to. And I just think we might be past the time where we can sit with ourselves and say, no, I know you want your child to come back. Other kids are able to come back, but yours may not. I just can't sit with that much longer. And maybe it looks like for those students, let's get everything set for March 1st. And maybe we have a deadline that we come up with a plan, assess how many parents, go back out and say, how many of you would like your students to come back, get that number,
Right.
and find out what you need to do in structure, and then come up with a date
Sure.
that we could do that. Because I'm not, I mean, we haven't taken a vote on anything, but I am not comfortable telling those families from now until the end of school, you are stuck with what you chose in November, no matter how hard your kid is struggling. So if it can't be March 1st, to go back and offer it to those students to a date
Yeah.
where we could.
I would recommend the 9 weeks would be the obvious choice, and that would be March 1st?
March 23rd.
20, I'm sorry, yeah, so that'd be our, yeah.
One thing just to consider into that as we continue to evolve those classrooms, we're still have the need to make sure that we are spacing appropriately with the number of students that are in the room, and making sure that we're safe for all of the students that are there as well. So I think that's, as we talk about the size of those classrooms and the number of students, just as we're juggling and preparing for next week, something to continue to consider as well. And I think, I know board members that you are hearing from community and you're hearing from families. And I guess as the educator, I strongly encourage you to make sure that they're communicating with their building principal, make sure they're communicating with me, make sure they're communicating with their child's teacher. Because I also know that there's been a lot of, opportunities that what else can we do? How else? So it's been that communication that has come forward that has allowed the building principal to brainstorm some other options. So, okay, so you're not available during this time. What time works? Let's record this and we can get it to you this way. Or, so we're trying to be very creative and meet those needs because we know what a challenge it is. Our teachers in the district they're feeling the students that are failing. They're very much struggling with that. And so they're trying to be creative and do that. But if they're not having that contact and they don't have that opportunity, then that puts us at a disadvantage as well. So please do not hesitate to send them my way, send them to our principals, and allow us to try to meet those needs and encourage those families as well as we can.
I absolutely agree with you. And every concern I get from a parent, I do direct them to that.
Thank you. So
And
appreciate that.
With absolutely everyone, I don't try to answer specific educational questions. We get them to the person that they need. So if your staff's not hearing that much, because what I hear from the parents is, well, I've tried, and, I've already talked to the principal and so on. So when one of two things is happening, either they have not tried that, they have not actually done that, or there's so few that have, that it's not hitting your
the radar.
staff as a
Right.
large number. This is not alarming.
Right.
One of the two things is happening. But either way, both answers, I think, lends itself to going back to that segment of our student population who made a choice in November and giving that family the same opportunity that the other students are having to come back on campus should they need to. And in that way, we're giving the better handout that those children need to grab onto to thrive here. And we're also still protecting those families that need virtual learning because of susceptibility to the pandemic.
Yeah.
So would that be the blend, John, if you have an opportunity
Yeah, no, I think, yep,
to survey how many is that,
absolutely.
so that you can see what staffing impact
What impact is it?
What do you need to do? And then how much time do you need to
Yeah,
accomplish?
and it may not be the doomsday I'm worried about. But you also, and we have some funds now too, and maybe we can find some creative ways to up those numbers.
Is there a way to ask how we support the ones that aren't logging in, or is it technology? Is it they're logging in, they're not understanding? Is it?
I think
that
it's a
they-
combination of things. I've heard from some parents they're just white flagging it. They're just done. But also, and it's not very many parents. Let's be honest. There are a few that choose the at-home model because they don't want to worry about any of it. They don't want to get up in the morning. They don't want to get. They're not very many, but there are some. We all know. So I think some of those they won't opt back and they won't change, and they'll still say I don't want my kid there, but they still won't log in. So I think there'll be some of those that trickle on. But I think, Marielle, it's a combination of things. I think there's some issues. Sometimes you've got a couple kids, one computer. That's a challenge. There are lots of barriers, and I think it's all in the pot, unfortunately.
I think, though, John, and your point's well taken, but I think of the families who just don't care, they picked that because they don't care, that's not who's going to take the time to call a board member either.
I'll give you that. You are
so
sure.
The ones who took the time to call a board member are begging for a better option for the children, and I think we need to figure out how to give it to them.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
It's going to be like an avalanche of issues. I'm looking at this number, 50% of the 80. All these kids are coming back, obviously not prepared for the next grade.
Right.
Okay. And I know you guys are discussing that because for some reason, as fast as the pandemic came, the way things are going, who knows what it's going to be like next year. So if we get an influx of all these students who have lost a whole total year of learning pretty much, how are we working to, because these kids are going to be coming in, are you passing them to the next grade? How does that work?
Well, that's a great question, Brian. We've talked about that a little bit earlier, that I do see a combination of all those things. We do have, we can place a child or we retain a child. We can still say, well, you need to attend summer school in order to be promoted. We do that. That's kind of a typical thing. I think case by case, all those options will be available. And with some that say, we know that there's no one at home getting you sort of around to do this stuff, we'll see you in the fall and we'll get you caught up. So I think it's going to be all of those things, really child by child, to be quite honest. I don't think there's going to be a single plan. Because I think every child is going to come with a different gap, a different support structure, a different thing. So I think it'll be all of those things.
So this is going to bug out teachers when they have
absolutely.
An 8th grader or 6th grader, 6th grader or 7th grader who has,
And you can imagine, I think Tom touched on it.
behind.
Our teachers are conscientious people. They take what they do seriously, and they're just
They do.
they're dying because they're not having the success that they know they can have. So it's a mess.
I have heard
Overwhelming.
teachers say they hate the hybrid. They want all the kids
Yeah,
5
absolutely.
days right now. They're ready.
Yep.
They're ready.
Yep. And let's be honest, I divided staff too. There is on both ends of that. So
I know the whole world's right now, John. I know.
Yeah, you get it.
How about this? What is a reasonable time to give you? How long would it take you to assess how many of that segment would want to come back, and then what might you need to do to accommodate it if I ask the board to consider a special meeting in 1 week to hear what your plan is? Not to implement.
Got it.
But to give you a week to research
Sure.
and see what we may need.
I come back with a plan.
Yeah,
So at least identify the families that would like to come back, and then just how we would manage that if we had
Exactly. And then how much time would you need?
to. Then to make that
come
happen.
back with how many, what does it look like, and by when?
Yeah.
Resources.
So I'd like to make a motion that we schedule a special meeting to meet in 1 week. And the directive to the superintendent is to identify, and I'll slow down for you, Ira. I know this is a lot. The directive is first,
Motion for special meeting
for a special meeting in 1 week.
for March 1st.
Is that pushing it? Oh,
It's just for him to find out information. He doesn't have to do anything by then, but he's got a
Just
week to get
present a
the
plan.
information.
Right.
Get the information to find out, to have surveyed the virtual learning parents, how many want their children to come back now. And assess what you would need to do and how much time you would need to do it So how many, what needs done, and how much time? And then we can look at that as a group and come up with a plan. That's my motion. So you have a motion on the floor. He'll open it up for discussion by.
Okay.
You have a motion on the floor.
Okay, Ms. Laird made a motion to have a special meeting next Monday, March 1st. To hear Mr. Detweiler's plan as to how to accommodate the virtual learners who want to return to school when that becomes an option. Do we have a second?
All right, colleagues, is it the timeline, or you really are all okay letting kids stay home who want to come back?
No, I
So
just,
someone modify my, if that's not it, modify it.
I think it's kind of unrealistic to, number one, if you're going to survey parents, there has to be a survey, which has to be, made, or.
Yeah, if I understand you're not telling me to have the survey done in a week, or are you?
No, I'm telling you to get an idea.
Yeah.
Of how
Right.
many,
So
how many.
I think if I wanted you to have the survey done in a week, and I don't think that's, I'm not sure I could have results
Just try
back.
to get an idea of what would this look like if we do. Because, and the reason I came up with the week is you said that 9 weeks is what day?
23rd March.
5
So
weeks.
if we'd give him, if he'd have to have his
That's a
plan in
month,
place by the 9 weeks, he'd have to have his research done well ahead of that.
Right.
So that's all I'm asking for is the research.
Okay, from the research to the parents to back to us, how will that look?
Well, how long do you need for that?
Well, I think probably 2 weeks to get survey to all the parents that are involved and get a response back and get it tabulated, kind of know where those kids would be and how many in each grade level and all that. I think 2 weeks.
So if I modify.
If you want the survey done before we meet again, I would need 2 weeks.
Well, I'm not sure how else you would know how many students you're talking for
Exactly.
your plan.
Yep.
So if it's 2 weeks, is it at our next meeting? Bring it to the next meeting?
It's a regular meeting. We could do
So
that.
is that the issue? Is that, I mean, I guess I'd like to find out what the colleagues think. Are you okay with those parents who chose virtual that want to come back, making those children stay at home the rest of the year?
No, but I'm worried about how long, if he's going to be able to get the information. So
Okay.
how much time do you
I
need?
think 2 weeks I could have
2 weeks is okay.
numbers, class sizes, balanced, and a plan.
Is that the timeline that we're giving Mr. Detweiler to
I
research?
just wanted to be realistic,
Okay.
for a week to try to contact parents, find out how much, and even to get the survey or get the idea, and then to come back. I think a week is really, really not unrealistic, but little hard, little
I'm
difficult.
questioning a week too, because you would have to have the information by Friday so that you can put it together on Monday to present it.
Right. I don't think it'd be tough.
I was gonna suggest, do you need a couple more days, or?
I think the next board meeting would be perfect.
So next board meeting, modify, same motion, change the date.
Is this
Next board meeting.
K-12? Are
I
we,
don't think we need a motion then. It's just on the agenda.
We'll just put it on the agenda as a discussion item.
Okay. Fair enough.
K-12?
I have two problems with it, I guess. Is one, we were the ones as a board who made the decision. It was under John's recommendation to allow the kids to come back at 4 days and then 5 days. And we put in there provision of if kids were on hybrid, and because we are going into 4 days, that if they wanted to go out and go to at home, that we gave them that option. We should have, as a board, to me, it doesn't fall on John's shoulders. It should have been on us to take the time for all of us to consider, what about those kids that are parents that want their kids to be back in now, if it is going to be 4 to 5 days. I think that's on us, that we should have taken care of that. I mean, because it was our policy, it was our motion, and it was our decision to go, even though he had recommendations, it was still our job to say yes to it. And the other thing that I have a problem with is, I've wanted my kid to be in school all day since day one of this school year. Yet we made a motion at one board meeting to change the model, the program that we had in place. without giving parents any option or survey or 2 weeks notice or anything, and it was automatically hybrid.
So Tom, if I hear you right, and you have a right to be upset, you do. But if I hear you right, my what I think I'm hearing is we already made the plan, whether it's good or not, because it's on the board. That's what we did. That's what then we have. But the problem is that children suffer because of that. And
My child has suffered all school year.
I know, but
Because
why would we
of
say so you
four
all have
board-
to suffer
so
now?
Because 4 board members decided
that's
to
not
change
right.
look, we changed we had a plan that we voted on as to what we were going to do. Then that plan changed and the public had no notice. It was motioned at a meeting and it was changed on the spot with a vote of 4-1 to change the plan that we already had, that we had rolled out to the public.
My motion, Tom, is not about the past. My motion is where we are at today with the data that we have today and what do we do forward. And since it's going to be a discussion item on the next agenda,
fine.
instead of us fighting, how about we have a good discussion?
I'm not fighting. I'm fighting for my child. This is definitely about children. It absolutely is about
Saying from
children.
the beginning, children need to be here. But now, because the rest of us disagree with you at the beginning, all the children should get to stay home the rest of the time? Is that really the good response to that?
No,
Okay,
it's not.
then. Okay. So if we have an opportunity to say, in hindsight, knowing what we know now, it's better for children if we do something different, why wouldn't we consider it?
Because we didn't do it before.
Okay. All right.
Well, what we did do was say that we were going to support Mr. Detweiler's recommendation and his administrative plan. When, as an administrator, it's very difficult to change in midstream, especially when you're dealing with the multitude of staff that we have in the district. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but having been through it enough times, it might not have been the greatest plan as it has turned out, but that was the plan. That's what predicated the staffing decisions that were made and where everybody is and how many students they have and everything that has to be done to adjust the program to accommodate safety needs as a result of the pandemic that we're still in the middle of. I mean, I don't think anything's changed as far as that's concerned. But the administration needs time, if we're going to ask the administration to change now. And believe me, I want everybody in school. Everybody should be in school. This is a horrible situation that every district in the country has found itself. Some districts aren't in school yet at all. At least we offered hybrid, which is not a good situation either, but it's better than at home all the time. But the administration has got to have time to process what we're asking it to do and develop a new plan that makes sense in terms of the instructional program, the needs of the students who have been in school, who chose to be in school and using the hybrid model. Did I hear you correctly that some students will have to change teachers as a result of?
Yes.
That's not fair either.
Because as you bring those kids back into the K-5 model, we'll have over 30 kids in some of those classrooms, and I got to start pulling teachers out of the virtual model to shuffle kids. Yeah, I mean, it's disruptive, yeah. But there's no pretty way
Different
forward.
models, right? The one from K to 5, and they have their teacher, and then this other one, what we have on this chart is the ones that are doing it independently, right?
Correct.
So how are the ones doing K through 5?
I think better, but I think, as
Are
Mr.
they
Price
still safe?
alluded, there are some kids there who have just checked out as well. I mean, and
Well, I agree that we need a change. We can't let this continue for the whole school year, but what is that change? And I agree that you need time to
Yeah.
do the
We need to
survey.
know how many
Right.
kids want to come back.
right, that's really that's the magic thing is how many kids are there, and can we make that work
And
somehow?
can we make it work? So
Right.
that
I think in 2
fair
weeks. I think
for
in 2 weeks.
everybody. There's more than just those students.
I
Those students are
absolutely
very
agree.
important. The students that are here are very important. I wouldn't want children to lose their teacher in the middle of,
But I think
that's
a
not
lot.
right.
I know, and I know that would be difficult, but I think we just gotta. Throughout this, one of the things that I personally think was good is as we learned more and more needs assessment came back, we adjusted to what we knew and what the needs were then. And I think it's okay to take a look.
There's
what
no
I'm
problem taking a look, but what we did was to try to protect the safety of the students and the staff.
Absolutely.
Right from day one, that was our top priority. And it's a complicated situation that we can't do. The administration has to do that, to figure out the program design that's going to meet the needs of everybody.
I have a question for Mr. Detweiler.
ma'am.
The students that have checked out, how do we reach out to them?
Well, we've done home visits, phone calls, emails. Yeah, I mean, all the normal stuff. We truly have done home visits to try to get, especially the 6 through 8 kids, re-engaged.
Then you said the opportunity you had funding for tutors.
I'm sorry?
You said you had funding for tutors.
Well, we do have some ESSER funds available, but unfortunately right now, even finding tutors even saying that is a lot harder than doing, especially this time of year. But no, yeah,
The
we do have
reason
some.
why I said this situation is similar, and I know that K through 12 is somewhat different from college. But in one of my roles at Tiffin University, when I went to graduate student services, working with MBA students, the retention rate there was at, I think, 44%. Myself and a colleague, we were charged to retain these students, and we had an at-risk group. And what we simply did is build a phenomenal communications plan where we were constantly using systems targeting these students. You would target, the parents as
Sure.
well, but sending communication messages, giving resources for tutoring and checking up on them. And we did find that some of those students, with the continue constant
Yeah.
notification or the knock at the door,
Yep.
begin to come alive. But even in that communications plan, sometimes students just need to know, hey, we know that you've gotten behind, but we have a plan to help you. Because a lot of times, from my experience, when students are failing, they just continue to ignore because they feel
Overwhelmed.
defeated.
Yep.
So
Yep. There's the wave the white flag thing. You're absolutely right.
Yes, there's a population in our district who won't work independently because they don't understand what they're doing, and they need a teacher. And that's a good part of this number here that we're concerned about right now.
Thank you.
Yep. So may I clarify, just so I don't miss here. Going to make sure I understand how many kids K through 12 would like to go from the all virtual learning into the seated model, and then whatever impact that would have, or the best way to try to make that happen.
And what kind of timeline?
Yes, and what it would take to do that. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
We need to know, we
Full
can't-
impact.
We can't have 30 kids in a class.
That's right.
obviously.
And when is disrupting all the classes that have been successful for 3 quarters, when is it okay to do that? And I think that's a real line. I mean, that's a real question. So I'll probably have to share with you, to do this, I've got to now pull that that teacher away from the virtual class that they've had for 3 quarters of the year and send those kids all over the district virtually to get that teacher back in the classroom in order to manage the needs of those kids who are coming back in, to maintain under 30 across the hall. So it's impactful, but we will get on it.
And nobody's made a motion to do it. We've only made a motion
Talk about it.
to look at it.
Yes, right. All right, absolutely. Yeah, full disclosure. The information will be out. We'll have all the information we need to make a decision, informed decision. Okay.
So in my minutes, motion died due to lack of second, or was it withdrawn?
Well, withdrawn, because we're taking the action, we just changed the timeline of it.
Well, the motion was to have a special meeting.
Right.
We're
A
gonna-
special meeting?
Yeah, so we're
Okay,
gonna
yeah,
put it to
withdrawn
the
for the
regular
special meeting
meeting.
since we're gonna do it, yeah. Thank you, you're right.
Okay. So back to your packet. Mrs. Ray, I hope I answered your questions. I gave you obviously more information than we needed. We will hopefully move through the rest of this in a timely manner. Mr. Price, your question, you specifically had asked me to look at fall 1920 iReady data and fall 2021 data. And so that is the next piece in your packet. I aligned for you. You'll be able to see the N number is the number of students that were involved in that. If you remember from our previous conversations, green is good. We always want to grow the green. Yellow is our students that are proficient, they're average in the middle. Red is our areas of concern. So you can see there, the first one in your packet, I believe, is reading in the top right, and the second one is math. And when we first looked at this data at the end of the first quarter, we were pleased. We found moment of celebration with our teaching staff because we were very, very concerned about the loss of instructional time that took place in March, very drastically, and that we had to move to a different platform very quickly. And we were very worried about that 9 weeks lost instruction to build into summer slide that we know many times with elementary children is not positive. When we compared those two pieces of data, we were very happy. Not saying that all of our numbers are excellent. We always have room to grow and to continue to do better. But the fact that it was very resemblant of the year before really did speak to the idea that our teachers did work really hard. Our kids, our families worked really, really hard last spring during that fourth quarter. And that maybe we didn't experience the loss that we had anticipated.
Denise, would our at-home learners, virtual learners have done the iReady?
Yes,
Okay, so this is all students.
this is all students,
K-5, correct?
K-5. Does that answer the question that you
Yes,
had
thank
had
very-
and you
yes,
were?
thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so the last piece of our packet, there's a couple of things in here for you. And I believe that, Ms. Laird, this was your question. You were asking me to be able to present some data that would gauge how our district was doing academically in comparison to other districts. And our conversation specifically, we were looking at the iReady data at the time, and that's what you had asked me to look at other districts that were using iReady. So, and my concern initially was the apples to apples, apples to oranges pieces of data. There are diagnostic assessments that will produce the information to say whether or not that student is on track or not on track. They are somewhat aligned. They are not identical. I would very much pause to compare data for us from our district to a similar district, say to Oatfort, that's using AimsWeb. Their AimsWeb data and our iReady data, K5, there would be a conflict.
I think that we also talked about not just the iReady, but districts of other like demographics.
Correct. So
Population, all
yes.
that.
So if you take a look at what you have in your packet, so the first thing I looked at is I looked at the topography graph of the ODE list and ranks buildings based on demographics, based on population, based on small city, large city, urban, rural, and they combine those. On that graph, Fremont City Schools is a 4. There's different categories that go into this. Some of these schools that you're looking at here are actually a 7. They fall into a different category. However, I found enough similarities. We are not very similar to other 4s. Fremont City Schools, the makeup of us, we become very unique sometimes. We feel larger than we are. We become diverse. More so than our similar districts of population size. So I branched into a different category to be able to find some similar districts. So these may be different similar districts than we've compared in the past. The first thing I looked at was state report card data. And I have a star for us, a note there to lead you to the bottom of the page. If you remember correctly, we need to go back and look at the 1819 report card data because the 1920 had no letters or rankings. So I cannot use that most current report card data. So I looked at these districts, and this should give you a rating, a letter grade for every component on the state report card. So this really does solidify for us that these are very similar districts for us for every area of the report card. You'll see areas that we may excel a little bit more. You'll see areas that another district, comparable district here, may excel a little bit more, but they're all very typical, very average. Any questions on that 1819 report card data? And I really just wanted to be able to share with you and solidify these districts that I was choosing for this study, that these truly are comparable districts for us. The next item in your packet, I took those districts, and this is a back to front and back, so if you flip that over, you'll see both sides. I took those 4 districts to determine that we are comparable to, and I went into their report cards and I pulled all of their data. So this is where we can take a look at that enrollment of all students, and you'll see very strong similarities from district to district. I specifically looked at their number or percentage of economically disadvantaged when I was trying to find that comparability. And then I also looked at our students of color and where they would fall on here. You will see discrepancy. Some of the districts have a higher African American population versus their Hispanic population. Other districts have a very strong Hispanic population and not as many multiracial. But if we could combine them and look at them as a whole the diversity of our student of color, I think that you will see that connection. Any questions about that piece? Okay. These 4 districts that I am able to compare Fremont City Schools to, and we all agree that they are comparable districts, all use iReady. So now I was able to take these 4 districts and be able to give us comparative data, specifically looking at K-5 and our iReady data. So that is the final piece in your packet tonight. Now, I worked very closely with Curriculum Associates. That is the parent company for iReady. We have a wonderful working relationship with them. Due to the confidentiality of the data, you will notice that the districts are simply listed at the bottom, A, B, C, and D. We will not know which one is Euclid and which one is Painesville or Lima, but know that it is those 4 districts in some capacity in order. I can tell you that District A is District A on all 4 sheets, so you can be consistent with that. But again, we know that it's only a comparable district. The first 2 in your packet are reading data, so you can have a look at fall 2020 and winter 2021. Fremont City is the column all the way to the left. We are extremely comparable in the reading data to the other districts that we are comparable to. In fact, I would challenge to say I think that we are striving a little bit above the other districts. When I say often when I look at data, we want to grow the green. Green is where you want to see that. Remember that yellow is our average kids. They are proficient in making a year's growth, on target to make a year's growth. And it is our red students that we would cause us the most concern. And that is our lowest population. If you continue in your packet, you can see the same for math. You see fall 2020, as well as winter 2021. The other piece that I would caution when we look at the data, sometimes we're quick to say, oh, I wish we would have made more growth. I wish we would have grown from fall to winter. Remember that the benchmark changes for winter. We are expecting more of our students, and what we are comparing them to on a national norm is a greater component. It's not apples to apples here. What we ask a child to know in September, we are asking them to know something different in December. So you would want to see that to be a very comparable number or an increased number. It would cause us concern if we were losing student achievement in that capacity. Ms. Laird, I hope I answered your question and pulled the data that to support what you were hoping to see.
Absolutely.
Any questions to that
I
piece?
wish this is how it could be presented to the public. I really do, because this shows the apples to apples and where we're at.
Yeah, and who looks like us. That's
Yeah.
right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Corbett, so first of all, Denise, thank you. Tremendous effort. And I know about a week ago, we were still pretty discouraged. We weren't going to find anything to make it work. So I know that you spent hours and
Thank
hours
you.
to make that happen. I really appreciate your efforts. I'm sure the board does too. I
Thank you.
think that's my recommendations.
Okay. Legislative liaison report?
Because I had to walk in here late, I left it in the car. I figured you guys might be past this, so, next meeting.
We'll table that.
There won't be a
We'll hear it
big
next.
change.
Okay, staff matters.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gorbetz. Item 1, resignation of Karen Lowry from our Lutz secretary position and Nan Kramer from, as a paraprofessional aide. Those 2 retirements, please. I'm sorry, appointment, retirement, I'm sorry, resignation and appointment. I apologize.
Do we have a motion to approve items 1 and 2?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Ray, seconded by Ms. Laird. For a second, I thought that was Mr. Price who made the motion.
Oh, this red.
Okay.
Can't see me.
Are there any questions regarding items 1 and 2? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Espiritu,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbitz.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, fiscal matters.
Thank you, Mr. Gorbitz. I'll be quick. You've got the report. I just want to make a couple comments. We're 7 months into the school year. A couple things that just as I go down and look at it, our real estate taxes, if you look at January, our current year to date this year versus last year, you'll notice that last year is significantly higher by about $770,000. That's because last year we got an advance payment on our real estate taxes, whereas we did not get an advance payment this year on our real estate taxes. Doesn't mean that it's gone, it's just the county sometimes will advance pay and then follow up with the rest. So we did not get that this year, which is the big discrepancy. I do expect our real estate taxes to come very close to the real estate tax budget as you see it on that piece. I did have a conversation today with the county auditor just to kind of get a feel for where real estate tax collections are. Currently, they're running about 10% behind last year, but she did not feel that that should be much concern. She thinks it will catch up. Difficult to say whether it's because of slow pay or slow USPS delivery. But I anticipate that we will come close to the budget. A couple other things I would just want to touch on. The personal property, the PUPP. I'm expecting us to be a little bit under budget as Nexus. We've got a couple of things going for us. One wasn't in my notes, but with the change in administration at the top and the pipeline stuff that has ceased producing, But Nexus also, in filing their tax return for last year, their values were reduced by about 13%. So they're continuing to pay a tender pay of 47%, but it's on a lower number. School district income tax, we started out really about $1 million down. We've come back to about $500,000. If I look at the trend from the last couple of years, I think the number that we have for the budget is pretty close to being right on. So those are things I just wanted to comment on a little bit tonight, just to give you a feel for it as we're starting to march now toward what the end of the year is going to look like. Any questions? Mr. Gorbitz, if I could have a motion?
Is there a, can we, is there a reason why our interest on investments is so?
Thank you. Yes. Number one, this is probably the lowest interest rate environment that we have experienced forever. Even pre-post 2008, 2009, we're earning 0.001, maybe 0.002 I shouldn't say percent, but roughly 0.1% on our funds. Number one. Number two, because of our deficit spending, which has eroded our piggy bank, there's less out there to invest. So it's a combination of those two things together.
And some of the other negatives are going to be taking, or are going to rectify themselves, you see?
Well, if one of the things that I'd like to do down the road, of which I have not done yet, just trying not to confuse anybody, when you look at those negatives for the year, the increase, decrease. So historically, we've presented financial statements that present our anticipated this year versus our last year actual. Well, we're living in a time where this year is not necessarily a true reflection of what was happening in the past.
Okay.
That's the understatement of the century right there. I just point that out.
Oh, thank you. I pride myself.
This year's
on being
different? Really?
The obvious.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
And that's why I was talking
I
about
got to laugh.
budget.
I'm going to start crying, so it's all good.
Well, that's why I was talking about budget,
Right.
because really, in my mind, those things were taken into consideration when we put the 5-year forecast together. And so if I look at where I'm at and where I expect to be at the end of the year versus the budget, to me, that's a more meaningful figure than where we're at today versus where we were at this time last year.
Yeah, can we have a motion to approve item 3?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Laird,
Second.
second by Mr. Price. Are there any other questions regarding item 3? A roll call, please.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Gorbitz?
Yes. Motion carried. Okay, board member communications and information requests. Start with Mr. Price.
Shari, thank you for being part of Fremont City Schools again. And thank you to you and Denise and John for the information and the work going into more diverse things coming for staff and students and everything. And like we've talked for quite a while now, that's a very important thing to to be doing so. Thank you for all that work and information for us and everything. And Denise, thank you for answering our questions from before. This is great to look at. We can see it with our eyes now and see, and really with the graphs and everything, be able to compare. And that's the best thing we can do right now. So that's all I have.
Well, thanks to Shari. So happy to have her on board. And on another note, she is being up for an award through the Ohio School Board Association for not only her work here, but her former life, which is probably still part of this life. She's done many awesome things in our community, working with minority students to try to help them, turn around and become academically fluent. And I know some of those students, and we had a meeting with the counselors and the psychologists, and they were quite amazed because the students came in and did the presentation. So they saw the before and saw the after, and it was pretty awesome. She was working with Mama's House. So thank you for your past work and for what you're going to do and what you're doing. And also thanks to Denise and Mr. Detweiler and to staff. This is just a very difficult time. And it's like, I hear Mr. Detweiler say, it's like a moving target. So we're moving and we're changing, and about the time you think you have one thing all settled, then there's like a not an earthquake, but things get kind of shuffled around. And I'm just happy that I know it's difficult, but we're here to educate our children and just to see how things are. But it's also promising when we're comparing with other districts, not to put other districts down, but we're kind of ahead of the game a little bit in terms of numbers. So that had to come about as a lot of hard work for our staff and our administration. So thanks, Denise, for all you do, Mr. Detweiler, for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And thanks for we're not putting on a hot seat, but just looking at the data. It's very, very challenging. So thank you for that. Also, congratulations to Mrs. Lowry on her retirement.
Yep.
And she was a secretary at Lutz, and she's retiring. So
She was a student monitor with me back at the old middle school. She and I worked together at the old middle school. She was a student monitor back then, so
Okay.
many years of service.
So, and that's pretty much looking forward to good things happening in the future and us moving ahead. And we have a lot of things to work out, but we're doing it together, and that's pretty nice. So, I guess that's it.
Shari, I want to thank you for all of your efforts. And I want to thank you for staying at the meeting. You are the first guest that has stayed. And what I really love about that is to show the interest of what's going on in the school in general and what are we working on. And what I hope that you take away from this is that we're a board of 5 people that go in all heart, all the way, care very much about our district and our kids. And so we'll have some exchanges openly with each other, as government should be, which is open and still respect one another. I thank you for that. And Denise, thank you for the huge amount of hard work.
Yes.
And I hope whenever we ask you to do this, that our engagement at least lets you know that it wasn't for nothing. We really do try to then understand it and then implement it. Do something. What does this tell us about our kids, and what can we do to help better? So it's always put to good work. Sorry you have to do it, but we
No
really
problem.
appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And lastly, for me, John, I want to thank you. I meant it when I truly said you have had the toughest job on earth.
Thank you.
You really have. And I love that you engage in tough conversations with us. And you know what a tough road this is, and we're able to be open with one another and care about one another.
Kids.
As a result. Yes, we've all got the same
Yep.
objective at the end, and I thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
I want to thank Shari for coming and with Denise and John just presenting the information. And I'm glad to hear that it's moving along, the diversity inclusion, especially the interest by the staff. So that's a big deal because it's like they're on board and they see the need. So that's going to make a big difference in the school and in our community. I feel like it'll help close the gaps and bring us closer together, like understand each other. And that's huge because for a long time there has been gaps and no understanding. And it's like, how do you explain? And this looks like it's going to help. So thank you, Denise, for getting all this information together. I know it took you a long time, but it is very helpful to be able to see it. And you had your presentation, but there was still questions and just bringing the information back, and it's just very helpful. So thank you for your time. And John.
We got this. No problem. We'll get her. We're going to survive.
Yes, we're here with you together. I know the staff does a lot of work, and we ask sometimes of things that you weren't expecting. I'm sure you weren't expecting to report to work tomorrow when working on something like this.
We're on it.
Like we all agree that it's the best interest of the students. So
And I know where the hearts are. Thank you.
yes. So thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, I too would like to thank Sherry for being here, and as Chantel said, for staying. That's not only unusual, it's unheard of.
Oh, wait, don't forget about Jan. That sort of sticks around.
That's true.
Way back in the day, as Mr. Detweiler alluded to, we did recognize this as a problem that needed to be addressed. The difference this time is that back then there was nobody to really coordinate it and spearhead it. Mm-hmm. So everybody was kind of left to their own free will to do what they were going to do, you know. But there was a lot of information that we all received back then. I'm sure a lot of teachers incorporated that into their philosophical tendencies back then in terms of teaching and working with students. But it's clear you're going to be a huge asset to not only the school district, but to the city. So, welcome to the job. All I can do is repeat what's been said. You know, it's been a very difficult year. It's been very difficult since last March. It's been a calendar year, pretty much. And I think we've done the best we can under the circumstances. But there's a lot of complications involved in changing in the middle of the year, or at any time during the year. But if it can be done, I'm sure you will come up with a way to do it.
We will give it a try.
And again, you know, we want everybody to be in school. You know, that's not even a debatable subject. Everybody should be in school. But the population we're most concerned about with Denise's data is the population that absolutely has to have a teacher.
Yep.
And structure and routine and guidance and all the support services that a school provides, and they're just not getting that. And that's what's causing these numbers to be what they are. And I appreciate Mrs. Hurt's efforts once again. It seems like every meeting you're getting a different time-consuming assignment.
Okay.
But you know, this information is very worthwhile.
It's good analysis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Well, this time I couldn't tell which one of you said.
First, second.
Moved by Ms. Laird, seconded by Mrs.
Raise
Ray.
our hand.
Maybe we should. Would that be easier for you, Alex?
Just raise your hand. And then,
Okay, we can do that.
Wait, then you have to pay attention.
Go hand.
We used to do that years ago.
Okay.
We used to do that. Was Mrs. Hershey's idea,
Or
actually.
have a buzzer. It lights up.
All right, roll call, please.
Oh,
Ms. Laird,
yes.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Garbett.
Yes. Yeah, we were adjourned until